Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy 2 Vision. Eliminate blind spots and see right through every conversation with Happy 2 Vision. Learn more at ajppitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Thanks, everyone, for joining another episode of Next in Queue. My name is Rob Dwyer, and today, I say this a lot, that I'm excited about having people on the show. Today, I have someone that I consider a really good friend, someone that I have had the pleasure of working with side by side as a peer, and someone that I just really enjoyed. Maybe the best cube mate I have ever had in my entire life. Dee Layman is joining the show. Welcome, Dee. How are you?
Fabulous, Rob. Thank you for having me. And that was the diamond cubicle in the middle of the floor.
It was a great spot. It was a great spot. So currently you are a customer success manager at Square in St. Louis. But before we talk about that, as I do with everyone, I like to just kind of back us up and kind of figure out where you're coming from. And I know, because we've talked in the past, that you probably never saw yourself in this type of role when you were younger. So tell us about you, where you grew up, where you're coming from, and maybe why you didn't think that this is where you'd be.
Yeah, thank God we have an hour, huh?
Yeah.
What a story. Okay, so all right. Well, to start, let's start with where did I begin? I grew up in a tiny little town in Arkansas. It's called Marktree. I spent 15 beautiful years there. And then I experienced a culture shock like none other and moved to Missouri and walked into Seckman Middle School with, I'm virtually certain at the time, I had white tube socks on. Man, it was bad. It was really bad. And it took me a minute. I had this accent. I wasn't sure how I was going to fit in. I wasn't used to socializing with people in the way that people socialized here. I was used to being outside and climbing trees and, getting dirty and just I had known everyone since I had known everyone. And now I didn't know anyone. Anyway, that leads me to kind of how I became me. When I moved here, I realized really quickly, I spent probably 2 to 3 months hauled up in a room. And that's the opposite of who, if anyone has ever met Dee Layman, that's the opposite of who Dee Layman is. Dee Layman is very much a surround me with the people, let me feel them, let me love them. And I didn't want anything to do with St. Louis. I didn't want anything to do with Missouri. I wanted to go back to my home. I wanted to be back with my people. And what I found was every opportunity, that was my first opportunity to grow. That was when I first recognized in my adolescent years that I was uncomfortable. And I think that's what taught me how to deal with discomfort, if you will. There's this fight or flight of, I'm going to go home. I've only got a couple of years left of school. I can duck through this and I can make my way out. Or there was lean into what I knew. And what I knew at the time was basketball. Your girl loves basketball. Okay.
Yeah.
I still coach a girls team today because I just cannot stay away from it. All right. And I immediately, what I noticed was I was building so many relationships. I was making friends left and right simply by doing something that I loved, which led me immediately to kind of figure out who I was I am a people-focused, relationship-oriented individual. I always will be. And the question is, how was I going to use that? And I wasn't entirely sure, but I knew I needed health insurance, so I got a job at Convergys. In Arnold, Missouri. I believe they are now renamed Concentric. Still many of my favorite people there today. And when I got that job, much like many many people I know and love, I was blessed to have a good leader. I was blessed to have someone that looked at me and said, you know what, like, you've got all this potential to be great, but like, man, you're so immature, you'll never make it, you know? And he kind of saved me because I'm crying. And he said, no, dry it up. This is important. You need to hear this. You need to understand. I'm telling you that your future can be whatever you want it to be if you invest yourself in it. And so I'd say, I walk out and I clean my eyes and I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna have to find another job. And instead, again, I went home and it was the people. Here we are, back to the people. I went home and I'm, updating my resume. I'm looking around. I can find another job. At the time, I think I was making like $14 an hour. I could figure that out. But the people. And so I was like, nope, sticking with it. And that place built me. Anytime we talk about me, anytime we talk about where I am today, which I'm so proud of, it's one of my largest accomplishments to work for the company that I work for and to be so proud of our products and our people and our progress, all these things we'll get to. But Concentrix, it really built me because I was an advocate. I was a leader. I was a trainer. I was a leader of trainers. I was a leader of leaders. And ultimately, I got to do all of this leading because I was being led by amazing people. And so that's what got me to where I am today. Concentrix, it built me. It built me into who I am today. Yeah. I learned. I really was empowered there to tackle the hard stuff and to be given chances that I'd never have been given. I'd never have been given the chances I've been given. And if it weren't for that place, I'd never be where I am today. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, it's something that strikes me, and I have continued to tell people this as long as I have been involved in this industry in a way to tell other people about it, is that this business, more than I think most other businesses, allows you to come in with potentially no real experience in the real world, right? I've seen really, really young people. It's like the first real job they've ever had. They come into the business, and if they choose to apply themselves, to get good at their craft, to be willing to be uncomfortable and take chances and learn new things, they can grow into really big time roles. Mm-hmm. Without a college degree, without, business experience somewhere else. You can learn so much in this industry, and you can learn skills that then translate into all kinds of other businesses. So you're not pigeonholed in contact center if you want to move to something else, but you can gain a lot of skills and grow just by working in a contact center.
2 words you said that make it happen, and that is choices and willingness. I have found that if you are willing to approach a problem, whatever it may be, a new opportunity, mobility in your career, whatever you do, if you're willing to approach it and you're going to make a choice to invest in that approach, no matter what the outcome is, you're going to be successful because you're continuing to build relationships. You're continuing to learn more about either the product, the customers, or the brand that you serve. I often think, like, an example would be, I tell people all the time, it's so hard when often people will apply for positions and the answer is no, right? If we think about this and we break it down, probability tells us 70% of the time they're going to say no. That doesn't mean Dee Layman is not excellent. That just means Dee Layman wasn't the most excellent that day at that time, right? 30% of the time you're going to yes, and it's going to feel really good. But I tell people all the time, it's the no's where you really learn a lot about yourself. And I'll give an example. So I applied for a position. I was probably was probably a year or so ago. And knowing where I came from, I talked a little bit about Concentrics. What we did? We were a vendor, we were a partner, and we supported many different clients. And so Square, we of course as well have vendor partners, and a position had come up to basically be our vendor partner manager. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, like, how cool would that be? You know what I mean? Like to literally look back and be like, whoa, full 360. So I was like, man, I'm applying for it. I'm in. And I was all the way in. What was interesting is the site that I would have been supported was located in Mexico. And so, me, when I get into something, I'm into it. All right. So that is how I found the app Duolingo, and I started learning Spanish because I thought for sure by the end of this interview, if I had a really good couple sentences that I could say in Spanish, that's going to sound really, really good. I was in it. But see, the thing is, I didn't get that job, but I'm still in it with Duolingo, right? I'm still almost 326 days that I've been learning Spanish. And even though I didn't get that role, did not mean that myself, that I did not still have an opportunity to learn this thing, because I do, because still today I work for Square. And still today, my partner is in Mexico. And still today, my partner is doing a massive amount of amazing work. And any chance that I can increase my ability to communicate with them, it's going to be a success. And it's also kind of a cool party trick.
Yeah, it is. And it's more than that. I will. So, kudos to you for sticking with that. I think that is inspirational, right? How you can take what some people might view as an opportunity lost, right? I didn't get it. And you've turned it into an opportunity gained to learn a new skill. And I can tell you, like, I've traveled to Central and South America. I didn't take Spanish. I took German. Turns out not very useful. It was a bad idea. High school and college took a lot of German. Have found very few opportunities to use it, and thus I've lost it. But I do remember going to countries where everyone speaks Spanish and having so very little Spanish knowledge myself, and feeling very uncomfortable and wishing, like, gosh, I wish I would have taken Spanish. Like that would be really useful right now. And even in the United States, like, yeah, we live in the middle of the United States here in St. Louis, both you and I. There are lots of people who speak Spanish in St. Louis and Greater Missouri. So that's awesome. And I'm glad you took that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it is awesome. And just in case you're curious, it's a free app and you can learn a ton of different languages out there. I don't work for them. I got nothing to do with Duolingo, but it's a fun, I think nowadays with applications, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have all these different ways that we can stick our faces into the continued world that surrounds us, some of which is not always uplifting, and naturally we store these moments and these stressful times and we hang on to them. And so for me, what I found with this is, like, it really is an opportunity to, I'm going to be on my phone, or it's going to be in my pocket, it's going to be near me, I'm going to be looking at it, whatever the situation may be. So it's 15 minutes a day, if that. And the thing is it doesn't cost me anything, right? Like, I can literally just pull up this little application. I can play with my little flashcards. I can do my thing. But it feels like you're accomplishing something. You are actually accomplishing, not just feels like it. You're accomplishing something, because you're asking your brain to be rewarded in a way that's different than what you're used to, so it just feels good, all free.
Well, and you say, right, it doesn't take a lot of time or effort and it's free, but 15 minutes a day is a lot when For some people, when you're working a full-time job, which you are, you're coaching girls basketball, which you are, and we'll talk about maybe that in a little bit more. But also, you've got something else recently that has taken a pretty big chunk of time in your life, and that keeps you very busy, I would imagine, most days, right? So 15 minutes can be a lot. How do you
Yeah.
find that 15 minutes when you've got that beautiful baby girl in your house?
Yeah, man. So she takes my days and my nights and my very, very early mornings starting at 5 a.m. pretty much every day. But I love her and she's perfect. So how do I find that time? Number one, I'm glad you asked this question. I feel like I'm in an interview. What is your greatest opportunity, Dee Layman? Well, my greatest opportunity, Rob, is time management. My name is Dee Layman and I struggle with time management. Everything in my life is scheduled. And I used to, I'd be mentored and people would tell me, you've really got to take the time to dedicate the time. Like, nah, that just takes time. But I am so rigid in the aspect of I schedule. This is going to sound crazy. In leading my team, I schedule the time that I'm logging in to pull results every single morning. I schedule the time that I'm checking my email. I schedule the time that I'm taking my break to get my coffee. I schedule the time I enter a weekly update that, goes to my boss to keep her in the loop of what I'm doing with my team, how I'm driving performance, what roadblocks I might be facing. I schedule time to enter that. I schedule time to do my Spanish lesson. And I'm glad that I'm mentioning this because the thing is I work for an employer that understands that there's value. If you were to speak to my boss right now, she would be able to tell you about my Duolingo because she asks me about it relatively often. She may ask me a question and expect me to answer in Spanish, or when something comes up, I get the opportunity to attend because she knows that I've kind of invested myself there. And I work for a company that understands that doesn't only benefit me, it benefits them. It benefits all of us. And so everything is scheduled. That is how I find the time. And the second piece to that is, again, back to the company that I work for. At 5 o'clock, I'm done. At 5 o'clock, I am done. Is that to say that I never respond to a Slack or that I don't get an email or anything to that effect? No. If I choose to interact, I choose to interact. Again, I struggle a bit with time management, so I can't lie and say I don't make poor choices at times. But after 5 o'clock, I'm done. I have a workload that is manageable enough that I'm able to schedule the things that I need in my life, both personal and professional. And at 5 o'clock, I'm able to feel proud of what I've accomplished with a bit of time usually to spare, not every day. Some days are just, some days. But for the most part, my work-life balance is excellent. And I think it keeps me motivated, if that makes sense, right? I mentioned Amani wakes up at 5. I got this really cool schedule where I get to, I work from home, right? And I get to spend 5 o'clock from 8 o'clock every morning with my daughter, watching Gullah Gullah Island, drinking my coffee. And then at 8 o'clock, I walk in and I wake up my beautiful wife and I say, hey, babe, it's 8 o'clock, and she comes down and I walk into my office. It's maybe to some not much, but to me, this is my zone, right? When I walk in here, it's time to get shit done. And I come in here pumped up about it, right? And I think that's the last piece I want to add to time. It doesn't take a lot of time. I've learned how to really use time, Rob. I used to think that I needed 45 minutes for a one-on-one session with someone because I had to talk about all the things. And that's just not the case, right? I have really found that it's best to spend 20 minutes to 30 minutes with somebody and then to cut out if you can. And then it's also best to give people the opportunity to prep for any conversation they're having, right? So I use this thing that I have found to be super successful. It's called the 3 Ps. And in every invite I send on my GCal, I am going to take the time to document what is the purpose of this meeting, What am I passionate about? See, naturally I lead with passion. So I have to tell myself, start with the purpose. Otherwise, the whole 20 minutes will be passion. Okay. So what's the purpose? What's the passion? And what's the plan? And see, back to my GCal, everything is so organized. All I have to do now is, as I'm in this meeting, I'm literally just typing and saving. And then Google loves me so much that he or she just saves this information for me. And I can always at any point say to myself, what was that meeting? Oh, it was last Wednesday. Let me go see what me and Rob chatted about. And then I can just click that document and I can look at what I've got going on. And the world is what you make of it. I know I'm not good with time management. So I know I've got to schedule a 30-minute meeting. I know the first 30 minutes of that meeting is meant for me and the person that I'm meeting with to both fill out our Ps. And then the last 20 minutes of that meeting, let's come together, right now, faithfully. You see what I did there?
Yes, I see what you did there. And I have to tell you, you keep saying, I schedule with time management. But what I hear in what you describe about how you manage your time is that you've taken what you perceived as a weakness, maybe what you were told was a weakness, and also recognized in yourself that this is a weakness. And you've turned it into a strength, because now you are managing your time so well. And you say, well, I've got a manageable workload. It is manageable because you've managed the time to make sure that when that 5 o'clock comes around, I feel like I've done what I need to do, and now I can go spend important time on other things that are important to me, which is family and whatever else you got going on. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's life, right? That's kind of what I was talking about. You open this up by asking, where did you come from and where did you go? How'd you get there? And that's literally
Cotton Eye Joe.
Yeah. I see what you did there. That's life. It is all about, we are all going to struggle. The question is, can you lean into that struggle and make something of it? And so I think that's been the thing for me, whether it's been time management, whether it's been finding balance in my leadership style, no matter what I've tried to tackle in my professional career, I've really leaned into it. And I've really said to myself, if someone cares about me, because see, that's important, right? And you know this because you've given me feedback. When someone cares about you enough to give you real feedback, it's so very important you hear them, because people that don't care about you will see you do very foolish things that could potentially impact your career negatively. And if they don't say anything to you, they don't care about you. It's the individuals that care about you enough to say, hey man, anytime you are late for this meeting, even if it's just 2 to 3 minutes, it kind of sends me the message that like you're not in as much as I'm in. It hurts my feelings. Not D, you're a terrible person, you need to spend less time on the smoking patio, but D, the meeting started at 10:15 and I need you to be here. And if people don't say that, and instead of giving me the opportunity to go, right, like they really value their time and I'm disrespecting them, right? And to learn in my life how to understand what time means to people, and also to understand the weight of conversations doesn't merit how much you invest in the time. I think that's important too, because I have an individual on my team that he's going to school right now to get his master's in program design. And the amount of time that he will spend preparing to tell me, his leader, about the work that he is doing in school is really quite impressive. And then the benefit to this is an amazing specialist of mine. I'm learning his craft. I'm learning his love and his passion. And in the meantime, I'm also connecting him with individuals that I've built relationships with throughout my time at this company, because at the end of the day, inevitably what I would love to have happen is for him to graduate and him to be able to say, wow, this cool place, Dee Layman connected me to this cool person. Now I've got this cool degree, and what I love to do is get this cool job. And so I just think it's about if an opportunity lies, and the reason that I bring up, him is because that was the opportunity. You know, eventually I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to leave. No, not if I have anything to do with it. You know, I mean, if you do leave, okay, I'm still going to throw you a going away party. We're probably going to, you know, it's going to be a good time, but not if I have anything to do with it. So just leaning into it. And that's with anything in life, you know, so time management. Another one I mentioned was just finding balance and like my leadership style. And what that can mean is, you know, again, leaning into it. For many, many years of my career, I was the cheerleader. And I will caution you, that is a very dangerous place to be. Being a people pleaser is very hard to come back from. And it yields a really good return, which sucks. When you're a people pleaser, people love you. Well, naturally, it's in the damn title, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just not productive. And I spent years and years and years of my career receiving things, not because of my intelligence and not because of my skill set, but because of my work ethic and my ability to please people, both of which are still skills I promise you are very good to have in my tool belt, and I still utilize them all of the time. But I think what I found is by leaning into the fact that I needed to find balance in a difficult conversation is only as difficult as you make it. If you wait to talk about attendance until attendance is a problem, well, guess what? You're talking about a problem versus talking about a flat tire. Everybody gets a flat tire. Not everybody has to have a problem today, right? Like we can talk these things through, but it took me a really, really long time to get there.
You bring up something that I think most new leaders struggle with, and that is that, you know, anytime that we get uncomfortable, right, and being new in a role automatically creates some level of discomfort. I don't care who you are, that's just going to be the case. We tend to fall back on kind of what's worked for us and maybe shy away from the things that we don't feel all that comfortable with. For you, right, that may be, right, engaging people about kind of the serious stuff, or maybe potential problems, or holding people accountable, whatever the case may be. And other people have the same yet different struggles, but understanding that you can work on those things, and that they are skills, and that you can get better at that. I think that's the thing that most young leaders, I'd say young, that's the wrong word, most new leaders aren't getting enough of, which is that coaching and how you improve in those areas that maybe are weaker for you, so that you can be balanced.
I couldn't agree more. And it's all, in my opinion, it's all too about having a space for it. You know what I mean? I think it's just, you just have to have a space for it. And I think it's so important to, if you recognize within a human that a human has a strength, right? It's incumbent upon you to empower them to utilize that strength. And it should be no different. If you're a true leader, it should be no different with an opportunity. And I agree with you. I think you hit the word new, not necessarily young, because nowadays it's amazing to see what some of our younger peers are able to do. But often I think that people think that leading a team means simply talking about performance results. And I think that leading a team earns you the right to talk about performance results. I think that all of the things that you do as a leader earns you the right to celebrate the results that you achieve. And so often in my one-on-ones, and I was very blessed. We spent so much time together, years focusing on coaching tactics. And if you think about this, Rob, we literally had years of our lives that we watched some of the best coaches coach, and we were just able to That's good, right? Like
Yeah.
that is good. Let me give you some feedback about how you can improve that, right? And I think that might have been one of my favorites as a leader, one of my favorite opportunities, because as I've mentioned, things such as, time management, balance in my career, navigating things such as difficult discussions, I learned from amazingly well-rounded people that too have overcome challenges that they have had. Because see, on the flip side, I'm naturally a feeler. I'm a very emotionally driven human, and you know this about me. And so when I say I struggle with difficult conversations, I didn't struggle with the content of what we were discussing. Attendance is attendance. If you violated a policy, you violated a policy. That's not the issue. But when you feel for a person, you anticipate their reaction. Um, on the flip side of that, though, if you think about it, people often think that people that are more logical, that don't feel as much, don't struggle with difficult conversations because they don't feel that. But that's not true. On the flip side of that, they very much do. And now they're being paired with someone that they're struggling to communicate with because you've not prepared for them. Okay. That individual needed you to be invested 3 weeks before this conversation, and it would have been so much more comfortable for everyone. And so I think that, again, I'll kind of come back to GCal. As crazy as it seems, I have no surprise meetings. I never imagined I'd get there a day in my life. I never imagined that I would be in a place that if I was going to have a little naughty session or a come to Jesus, if you will, that I would inform you beforehand. I can literally think back to nightmares of people thinking that you're scheduling things the last 30 minutes of their shift because you don't want the rest of the day to be uncomfortable. And it's those times are so far behind me now, because now I can send an invite to an individual, and I can say to an individual, hey, based on the expectation, which we're all well aware of, I don't have to explain that, right? Like, again, that's where you earn the right. Your team is bought into what you're doing, right? And if they're not, then somewhere we've missed the boat, and we shouldn't probably be holding people accountable because we haven't quite gotten there yet. But I can say to an individual, hey, individual, based on where I'm seeing you're at right now versus where we expect to be at the end of the month, I'm a bit worried. Let's meet on Thursday and chat. I'm not saying, hey, individual, you're getting fired. I'm not saying, hey, individual, pull your results, get it up by Thursday. I'm saying, hey, as your leader, I want you to be successful. What I don't want to do is I don't want to meet with you next month on the 3rd after data has cleared to say to you, individual, you missed this expectation. I don't want to do that. What I'd much rather do is I'd much rather meet with you today and figure out how we can close that gap. And I tell you what, even if we can't close the gap, what we've done is we've at least partnered enough that by the time on the 3rd that I need to send that email, it says, hey, individual, I want to follow up on our expectation with this metric. No one's surprised. And the deal is, no one's upset. No one's upset with me, and no one's upset with anybody, because at this point we've invested. We've tried. And sometimes you try and fail, but you stick with it and you get better.
Yeah, and that transparency, I think, is something that everyone really appreciates from leadership. Like being transparent about what your intentions are, what your expectations are, and what follows, right? Whether I meet or I don't meet the expectation, and that allows me to be more transparent about what I'm doing to try and get there, and maybe what obstacles I'm facing, and then we can work to overcome those obstacles together instead of it just being all on my shoulders. So I love that. I wanted to talk a little bit with you. So, we talked about your time at Convergys / Concentrix, which is an outsourcer, right? And that's really, I mean, it's almost like you had an entire career there. You cut your teeth there. You went from, coming in as an agent. I think when you left, you were an operations manager, or
Yeah.
is that right? Yeah. So all of that was outsourcing. Although you supported, I think, the same clients pretty much the entire time that you were there. Then you went to Block, which is an insourcer. So I wanted to ask you, number one, a little bit about that decision. Like, it seems to me that I know I had to make a decision, and I know it can be difficult for people when they've been at a company for a long time, and you kind of get that like affinity for it.
Mhm.
So I'm curious what made you make that decision that, hey, I'm going to do something else, and then what was the biggest change for you when you went to Square?
Yeah. Uh, okay. So, well, first let's talk about why the move. Um, you've heard me talk a lot about people. It's inherently a part of who I am. Well, the second piece of who we are is product. If you are in customer service, you are supporting a product that people are using, and it's important that you are able to be passionate about both. And Rob, I know you can remember me running up and down the halls of Convergys Concentric saying, I can help you with that. I mean, we were ridiculous, but we were passionate about the products. We found ways to love cell phones and TV. Um, which is actually ironically what led me to where I am today. So, my wife Hannah is a hairstylist. And so often, just within her career, she will have people that'll come naturally by the house on a weekend or after she's out of the shop, and they'll get a haircut. And sometimes they forget the cash, and so she had someone come by once and they said, hey, just here, you can set up your small business in 5 minutes and you can use this reader. And at the time, I kid you not, I was sitting there thinking, like, do not enter your bank account information in there. This is terrifying. This can't be real life. But it was, in fact, real life. And so I'm watching this person I love doing something she loves and making more money than she was previously making, simply because a piece of equipment existed that utilized a technology that was at the foundation was already laid for her. All she had to do was charge it and log in. Okay. And so it got me to thinking, like, who is Square? Who is this guy? Who is Square? And so I'm Googling Square. I'm okay. I'm seeing all of these different products that they have. And my mind was blown because truthfully, I just didn't know much about the company. At this point in time, they were a very, very small startup in St. Louis, here in St. Louis, we were very small. I think we had less than 100 people here in St. Louis at the time on the ground when I began. But this product, and I'm researching it, and I'm seeing all of these amazing things that this company is doing. And I was thinking to myself, the one thing that is, in my opinion, one of the most difficult things to do as a leader, which is connecting your people to your products. It's difficult at times. It can be difficult at times to make someone passionate about something that they just don't care about. And what I found was I cared so much about something that I wasn't even a part of, that I'm spending so much time researching it and learning about it. And at the time, this is also what changed for me when I came here. At the time, their starting pay for what would have been an advocate or an agent position was only about, let's ballpark it, not to be specific, let's say 10,000 difference in what I was making as an operations manager, which is crazy, right? Like, just take a minute. As an operations manager, I was running 2 programs, okay, supporting upwards of 13 leaders, probably 200 plus agents at the time. And it was about $10,000 difference. And so I had made the decision, man, I came from nothing here and I'm going to come from nothing there. I literally had said to myself, worst case scenario, if I go through this process and they say you're just not the one, then what? I'm left with an amazing job that I still love. I was in no trouble. It's not like I was in a position that I was like, whew, got to get another job, And so I went through the process, and thank God I had a job, because the interview process, woo, was a doozy. I went through 14 interviews, but I was blessed because as I was going through the interview process, and I mentioned I applied for an advocate position, as I was going through the interview process, I actually had a recruiter reach out to me and say, hey, based on everything that we've learned from you thus far, we think that you'd be, obviously better suited for a leadership position. And I was like, oh, the best news I've ever heard. Well, kind of. We don't have one right now, right? So you'd have to kind of wait for it. Right? So I did. And then when one opened, I interviewed for a lead position. And when I joined this company, I knew as soon as I walked through the doors, one thing meant the world to me, and that was a glass of water. A glass of water, Rob. I walked into interview, and my recruiter at the time sat me down in a room, and she said, hey, Dee, take a minute. Once you get comfortable, let me grab you something to drink. Would you like a glass of water? And I was like, she's kidding, right? Like, she's going to get me water. Okay. And she did. And it was so awesome because I felt immediately like it was okay to cross my legs. And I felt immediately like it was okay to wiggle a bit in my chair and to be comfortable when I get excited about things that I want to project. And I felt comfortable enough to say, man, my throat's dry, Rob. Is it cool if I get a drink before I answer this next question? And that glass of water was the proof in the pudding, because the difference from me, internal versus external, the difference from me truly is understanding the value of a person that you work with. I am fairly paid for what I do within this company. And it means the world to me because I love leading people. I don't love climbing the corporate ladder. I've truthfully got really no interest in that, Rob. And I work for a company that would support me if I woke up tomorrow and said, change my mind. I actually want to be Jack's best friend, right? Like, cool. I actually took a selfie with him once, whatever you want. But I did. It was really cool. But I am paid well to lead people. And I'm not challenged to do 5,000 other things. Of course, there are always going to be OKRs. There are always going to be modes of ways that you can improve your results and be a better leader, whatever it may be. But I'm not being pushed to be anything other than a great leader. Where I am pushed, and the one thing I love about this company, and when I come back to internal versus external, where I am pushed is to love the product. Okay. And so I am in love with Cash App. I'm in love with the things that this application is capable of doing. And I'm in love with the small things it can do that are not big things at all, but they do matter to some. And I say all of that to say, when you work for a company, for me, internal, versus like a partner site, I always felt very results driven, and I still absolutely do feel very results driven. I think the difference though is there is a certain understanding of what it takes to accomplish the results that's planned for. And what I mean by that is maybe it's the most simplistic things. Like we expect individuals to clock in and out of work throughout the day, but when do we give them time for that? Right? When is that scheduled on their schedule? I mentioned to you earlier, people having time to prep. Anytime you meet with an individual within our company, you get 5-10 minutes or so before to really stop and understand what is the objective of this meeting. To say to yourself, I might have just been watching the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case because I'm super interested right now. And that's not a bad thing. I'm human. But what I really need to do is I really need to get focused on this voice launch, right? Like I need to
Yeah.
come back and I need to realize what are they going to need from me today so that I can get in the right mental space to offer that. Right. And so that's been the biggest difference for me is it's all about empowering people to do their best work. And ultimately what inevitably ends up happening there is when people are doing their best work and they're in love with the product that they're working with, both are evolving naturally. It's a very
Mhm.
naturally flowing organism because our product continues to grow because we love it so much that we're invested in the feedback, we're invested in the bugs, we're invested in the fixes. And then the people on the opposite side, we continue to grow because if I want to fix this bug but I'm not so great at that thing, I've got to learn a bit. If I want to apply for this position but I don't speak a lick of Spanish, I've got to learn. But even if I don't get it, I've got a leader that still looks at me and says, wow, that was a badass move. Keep it up. How can I support you? Right. And so it's that thing of, really understanding all these things tie in. And the one thing that's different about being here is I truly feel like I work for Yes Square, but I also feel to a certain extent that they work for me. I feel like I'm in a partnership
Mm.
with the company that I
Mhm.
work for. And I feel that partnership in my benefits. I feel that partnership in my pay. I feel it in every aspect of my life. I'll walk upstairs after this meeting and I'll give my wife a hug and look around my home and I'll think, man, I'm so blessed to be here and I'm thankful for both of them really, Concentrix and Block. But the difference for me is really just the investment that's made in every individual. And again, not because you're a senior leader. We invest just as much in my specialists as we invest in me. And
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, you touch on a lot of things that I think, number one, I think outsource providers really struggle because a lot of their partners are looking to them as number one, a cost cutting measure instead of a partnership, right? I mean, yeah, there's partnership, but a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they outsource because it's less expensive to outsource. And then the problems, whatever problems there are, well, those are your problems,
Mm, yeah.
right? That's not my
Yeah.
problem. That's your problem. You figure out how to do it, right? This is right the agreement, right? So you think about just contracts, and we've seen this in this economy just over the last few years. Like there's been a big change in the expectation of wages, particularly at entry level jobs, but across the whole spectrum, right?
Mhm.
And contact center agents are often lumped into this kind of entry level position, even though you and I both know it's not entry level skills for someone
Mhm.
who's good at this job. Well, if I'm an outsourcer, I'm working with my existing contracts, but I'm still trying to hire talent in a rising wage environment. And whose problem is that? Well, it's the outsourcer's problem. It's not the partner's problem. They're like, it's a good thing we outsource. You got to deal with that, not us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that's a big challenge for outsourcers who typically are already working on relatively thin margins. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. A partnership with an outsourcer doesn't have to have those thin margins, and you can certainly care about those things and trying to make a good partnership. And there absolutely are companies out there that do that,
Hmm.
but there are some that don't.
Yeah.
And so there is that challenge, and you certainly hit on that. One of the other things that I think was interesting that you talked about, and you and I both came from that same environment, right? You get passionate about phones. I still have people come to me and ask about phones because we supported one of the largest wireless carriers in the United States. And so people think I'm an expert on phones, and I probably am compared to them, because now I
Yeah.
still geek out on phones. Like, I know what all the phones are out there. There's a lot
Yeah.
less these days than there were back in the day when Android in particular was really exploding, and Windows Phone, and you had the iPhone. You just had like a billion gazillion models of phones out there. But getting that passion in can be a challenge. But when you have it and you can tell a good story,
Mhm.
that is that's marketing. Like, I hear you telling this story about the little square,
Mhm.
swipe thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're you're a freaking commercial for the product, right then and there. But that helps people understand. So the people that you're leading, it helps them understand, like, what does this really do for people? What does it actually mean? And what problems is it solving to make their lives easier, make their lives better?
Yeah.
And when you can do that, it makes a world of difference. And I think a lot of people fall down on that, right? We don't talk about what we actually do and what the mission is, and what we accomplish for people with whatever product or service that we offer.
Yeah.
And I love that you were able to fall in love with a product and then say, I want to go work there, and made it happen.
Man, I'm I'm glad I did too, because it's completely, it's completely changed my life. But I think that all of the things that you're talking about, it all comes back to people, in my opinion. It really does. People, partnerships. I think about our partners, and I too. You mentioned some people do it well and some people don't. And without getting into too many specifics, I think it's an understanding of, it's important for a business to look at an outsourcer that they're going to work with and to ask specifically, how can they help you? Not what work do you need them to do? How can they help you? What is it that's happening to you right now that you don't know how to solve? Because the reality is, yeah, you yourself built an amazingly cool program, right? That with a click of a button was like, coaching session, copy and paste. And it was wild. And so that's the thing. I think often what can be overlooked is that we generally look to an outsourcer and we think, wow, we'll give this a mass amount of work and we'll push efficiency and we'll be able to like really drive results. Sometimes though, it's the problems that you're thinking, man, why can't we solve this? Why do we
Mm-hmm.
keep coming back to this, right? Like, we're running the circle on this problem, and maybe it's because it's not meant for us to solve. And so yes, there is that degree of, we want you in the work, we want you understanding what we're doing, we want you familiar with the ebbs and flows of our business, and to your point, our mission and who are we, and that feeling, all of those things. But at the same time, we want you also to be empowered, because that's who we are. We as a business, we should all want to be an ambassador. Anyone that works for this company should hope that when they get done having a conversation with you, if they get to a position to have a little, situation like this, how freaking cool is it to even have that, to be an ambassador of your company, right? And we should all strive to be that. And if you're somewhere now where you don't love the product or you don't love the people, ask yourself, why is that, right? And what can you do? How can you help yourself out of that? So again, when we think about partnerships, we look not just at what is this mass amount of work that's got to be moved up this huge mountain, but we also look at what are the small blocks that we can't figure out where they fit, because there are some really brilliant minds out there that would love the opportunity to solve that problem. They would love the opportunity to solve that problem. And what you'll find is they're solving that problem from a place of passion. right? And again, that's really the kicker. If you look at a person and you say, person, you've been assisting us with this volume in this email channel, and you've done an excellent job, right, with these efficiencies and this, that, and the other. And we've noticed you're making improvements with A. We've got this other thing, B, that we want to improve. If we gave you 30 days, what do you think you could do with it? You would be surprised. You don't have to hire someone for that. You don't have to train them to do it after you hire them. You don't have to solve the problem in itself, because you can go and you're going to have 5 or 6 people automatically. They're going to be like, oh, I've been thinking about that, because I nerd out and go home and play with the app and figure out ways to fix this. They're out there. And it takes empowerment. It takes you being the one to say, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And that kind of comes back to weaknesses, right? I'm really good at a few things, like really, really good at them. And there's a few things that I'm not that great at. But what I know is how to position myself in a manner to receive feedback and invite it. Flip those. Invite and then receive feedback. And to surround myself with people that can shine in an area that I cannot. If I need to step off the stage for a minute because I'm not excellent at driving a project across the finish line, if I need to step back and let my peer handle that because that's who they are as a human, then what's wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with that is if I'm not on the back end learning from what they are doing to be that person that you call on in the last minute, that you say, dude, this has got to get done. I'm feeling the pressure. I need you. Why did I need her? Why did I need them? And then ask yourself, learn from it, right? Invite that feedback and learn from it. Does that mean I was bad or the project was bad? No. That means I needed help, and help is good because with help, I learned. And also with help, I empowered somebody else to do something they love and that they're great at. Because if they didn't want to do it, you know what they just said to me? Love to help you, Dee, but this is your project. Unfortunately, I just don't have the bandwidth for it.
Speaking of stepping off the stage, can you believe that we have been talking for almost an hour now?
Wow.
I swear I could talk to you probably all night. Your wife would hate me and probably stomp down and say, hey, tell him it's time to go. And mine would do the same. So I think it's time for us to step off the stage. Dee, I love having you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for letting me be on your stage, Rob. Always a blast. And I look forward to talking with you again soon, okay?
Love it.